Usually, when we try to figure out how the world works, we really crave precision.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we want things to be clean.
But right, we want the universe to operate like a medical diagnosis.
Hmm.
You break your arm, the X-ray shows that jagged white line, and you can point right to it and say, "Well, there is the problem, and here is the exact solution."
Yeah, it's a very binary way of looking at things, and it is incredibly comforting to categorize reality that way.
It really is.
We put science and empiricism into one very clean box, and then we take faith, religion, intuition, and we shove all of that into a completely separate box.
And we just expect them to stay on their respective sides of the room.
Exactly. Don't cross the streams, right?
Right. But if you step into 19th century France, that clean X-ray machine just shatters completely.
Oh, completely. It's a mess.
You have this society in the immediate aftermath of massive sociopolitical upheaval. The old religious dogmas are losing their absolute grip, while this cold, rigid, scientific materialism is, rapidly taking over.
The landscape isn't binary anymore. It's incredibly volatile.
And charting a path through that specific crossfire is our mission for today's deep dive. So welcome, by the way. Today we are exploring Ben Hod's curriculum, specifically Map 2, Unit 4, which unpacks Eliphas Levi's Dogma and Ritual of High Magic.
Which is such a dense, fascinating text.
It really is. And Levi is attempting something massive here. He is trying to achieve the ultimate reconciliation between faith and reason, between science and religion.
And what's fascinating here is that he attempts this not by finding some polite middle ground, but by entirely redefining what it means to actually be wise.
Right. He isn't giving us a Sunday school lesson here.
No, not at all. He is trying to establish basically a physics of the human soul.
So let's start with the quote from the source material that really frames this entire pursuit. Levi writes, what is wisdom? It is the conciliation and the union of the two principles. And then he proceeds to list a series of really intense opposing forces.
He's talking about bringing actively hostile elements together.
Yeah. Which sounds like a recipe for a disaster, honestly.
Well, see, Levi isn't playing the moralist here. When he discusses wisdom, he is anchoring it in the Kabbalistic concept of the Sifra Chokmah.
Okay, unpack that a little for us.
So in this Kabbalistic framework, wisdom isn't some raw, one-directional zap of divine lightning from the heavens. It is a structural equilibration of the cosmos.
Structural equilibration.
Right. Look at the Latin root he uses for conciliation. The word is concilium.
Which translates to a council, right? Or an assembly.
Precisely. It implies a calling together of factions that, frankly, probably don't like each other very much.
Like a really tense political summit.
Exactly like that. Wisdom, in Levi's architecture, is a cosmic parliament. It's the two great Kabbalistic pillars of the Temple Judson and Boaz.
Mercy and severity.
Yes. And they cannot merge into one single pillar, or the whole roof caves in.
Right. You need two supports for a roof.
They must stand apart in this state of perfect, tense, muscular balance to actually support the architecture of knowledge.
So the tension is the point. The structure doesn't hold, despite the opposing forces. It holds literally because of them.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Okay, let's dive into how this cosmic parliament operates practically in the human mind. Because Levi subverts one of the oldest cultural narratives we have to explain it.
Oh, this is my favorite part of the text.
It's so good. He takes the story of Cain and Abel, and he just completely strips away all the traditional morality we attach to it.
It is a radical rhetorical maneuver, honestly, because in the Orthodox imaginary, we are taught this story as a straightforward tragedy of good versus evil.
Right. Abel is the innocent, pure victim.
And Cain is the pariah, the villain, the first murderer.
But Levi tells us to just stop looking at them as historical or moral figures entirely. He argues they are actually blueprints for energetic forces inside every single human being.
And the Hebrew etymology of their names reveals exactly how these forces operate.
Let's break that down because the sources go deep into this.
Yeah, so the word for Abel is hevel, which translates roughly to breath, vapor, or mist.
Breath or vapor, so it's very light.
Yes, it denotes a quality that is delicate, receptive, and spiritual. But it's really important to note that hevel isn't inherently weak.
Okay,
It is just devoid of violence. It lacks physical density.
got it. It's pure potential before it takes a heavy physical shape.
Exactly. Now look at Cain. The Hebrew word is quain, which stems from a root meaning to acquire, to possess, or to forge.
To forge, like a blacksmith.
Yes, in the deeper mythological layers, Cain is the primordial smith. He builds the first cities, he invents agriculture, he creates civilization itself.
Wow, okay. And to build a city, you have to cut down trees. To break the earth, you have to smelt iron. It's a violent process.
It is. Cain is raw, unshaped, volcanic force. He is
Yeah.
kinetic energy applied directly to matter.
And this is where the text gets incredibly practical. Because the sources point out that in Levy's 19th century occultism, force itself is considered morally neutral.
That's a huge distinction. The energy of Cain isn't evil, it's just raw power.
Right? Think about electricity. That's an analogy directly from the sources. The exact same electrical current can illuminate a beautiful stained glass window in a cathedral, or it can power a lethal executioner's chair.
It's the same electrons moving either way.
Exactly. Or think of fire. Fire can keep your family from freezing to death in the middle of winter, or that exact same fire can burn your entire village to the ground.
The current doesn't have a conscience, you know. The fire doesn't wake up and decide what to burn today.
Which means Levy is arguing that Cain is the electricity. Cain is the fire in the furnace of human progress. We actually need him.
Desperately.
You cannot build a society, or even, get out of bed in the morning to achieve a difficult goal using only breath and vapor. You need that aggressive, acquiring drive.
You need the Queen.
So if the goal isn't to kill Cain, what exactly is Abel's job here?
Abel's function is the mechanism of direction. Levy explicitly states that wisdom is, quote, the gentleness of Abel directing the energy of Cain.
Directing the energy.
Right. And to understand how this works mechanically, we have to look at the Latin root of the word directing, which is dirigere.
Okay, what does that break down into?
Dis means apart, and regere means to guide or to keep straight.
To keep straight. So if we go back to the analogy, Abel is the wire that keeps the electricity from arsing out and burning down the house.
That is the perfect analogy, yes. Abel is the circuitry.
Oh, I love that.
To direct something is not to suppress it. You aren't draining its power. Wisdom is the higher intellectual will Abel, harnessing the lower astral currents, which are our passions, our ambitions, our raw survival instincts.
So wisdom is not the absence of power.
Not at all. It is power that has been given a precise, disciplined geometry. It's power that has learned good manners.
That reframes spiritual maturity entirely for me. There's this common misconception that becoming wise means becoming, passive.
Yeah, that you just sit on a mountain and do nothing.
Right. That you have to detach from your passions, quiet your ambition, and just kind of float through life like vapor. But Levy is arguing that a spiritual practitioner without passion is essentially a car with no engine.
Yes. The tragedy of the biblical story isn't that Cain had tremendous fiery energy. The tragedy is that Cain operated without Abel there to keep his energy straight.
Wow.
Because without intelligence, force becomes blind destruction. But without force, intelligence is just impotent theory.
They have to be bound together.
They must be.
And binding them together brings us directly into Levy's use of alchemical metaphors.
Yeah.
Because we're moving from this internal psychology to how a person actually interacts with the universe.
This is where things get really dynamic.
Yeah, because the source text gives us this wild, almost jarring phrase. Levy says wisdom is debauchery conquered by legitimate marriage.
I know, it's quite a phrase.
Reading that with a modern mindset, it sounds like he's just advocating for Victorian puritanical domesticity. Like he's telling occultists to stop partying and go settle down in the suburbs.
It is remarkably easy to misinterpret that line if you strip it of its 19th century esoteric context.
So he's not giving dating advice.
No, we have to completely discard the idea that Levy is preaching domestic morality here.
Yeah.
He's describing pure alchemical mechanics.
Okay, that is a relief. So how does debauchery function as an alchemical concept?
Well, we have to peel back the modern moral baggage of the word. The old French root of debauchery is débaucher.
Debauché.
Right. And this is originally a woodworking or workshop term. It literally means to turn away from one's trade, to debauch, or to scatter raw materials.
Oh, interesting. So it implies a structure that has lost its integrity and is just spilling out everywhere.
Exactly. It's a failure of containment. Metaphysically, Levy is talking about the chaotic spilling of what he calls the astrolight.
The magical agent.
Yes, in his system, the astrolight is the great invisible magnetic fluid that permeates the universe, and it responds to human will.
So if a practitioner succumbs to debauchery, they aren't just breaking a moral rule.
No, they are failing to contain a highly volatile substance. They are letting this unshaped mercurial force leak out without a proper vessel to hold it.
Because you're wasting your fuel.
Worse than wasting it. It becomes a torrential flood that ultimately dissolves the practitioner's own psyche.
Okay, so if debauchery is a catastrophic leak in the system, then legitimate marriage must be the containment strategy.
Yes. Legitimate marriage is esoteric code for the great work of alchemy.
The great work.
Right. In alchemical philosophy, you have volatile mercury, which is the fluid, unshaped, passive principle, and you have fixed sulfur, which is the fiery, active principle.
The Cain and Abel forces again?
Exactly. The goal of the alchemist is to coagulate them, to force them into a union that produces a stabilized, perfect substance.
And he calls it a legitimate marriage because why?
Because this binding aligns with the supreme equilibrium of the cosmos. It mimics the universal laws that keep the planets in orbit.
Okay, let's unpack this a bit more because I want to zero in on the word conquered. Levy says debauchery conquered by legitimate marriage. Usually when we talk about conquering an enemy, we mean annihilating them, wiping them completely off the map.
Right, destroying them.
But the sources highlight a critical distinction in Levy's vocabulary here. Conquering, in this alchemical sense, is not puritanical annihilation. You aren't becoming an ascetic eunuch with no magical fuel to burn.
It absolutely cannot be destruction, or you lose the raw material you need for the great work itself.
Right, so the Latin root he's drawing from is conquire. It doesn't mean to kill.
What does it mean?
It means to eagerly hunt down, to seek out, and to harness.
Oh, that is brilliant.
Isn't it? You don't execute the wild beast of human desire. You track it down, you capture it, and you hitch it to your chariot. You use its monstrous strength to pull you forward.
That distinction changes everything about how a practitioner approaches their own shadow,
Totally.
You don't try to amputate your darker, chaotic drives. You force them into the crucible of this marriage. You synthesize them.
And what's wild is that Levy wasn't just theorizing about this internal psychological synthesis in a vacuum. He was trying to figure out how to hitch the beast to the chariot on a macro level, too.
Because he was watching the untamed energy of Cain literally tear his country apart.
Yes. The socio-political context here is so important. The sources remind us that Levy wasn't always just a mystic writing quietly in a study.
No, in his younger years, he was a radical socialist.
He was on the literal barricades. He traded the barricades for the tarot, basically.
He really did.
He knew the smell of gunpowder, and he knew the kinetic terror of a Mog. He'd seen firsthand what happens when society loses its containment vessel.
And the sources highlight his view that revolutionary energy must be, quote, softened and tamed by the gentleness of order and peace.
So how does he apply this historically? Because he's looking at this incredibly impartially.
Right. The historical stakes for Levy are clear. If Cain slays Abel on a national scale, if the revolutionary mob completely slays the structures of order, you don't get a utopia. You get the mindless bloodbath of the 1793 Reign of Terror. The guillotine just becomes a machine of blind, unguided force.
Raw power without structural geometry ends in a bloodbath.
Every time. But he also recognizes the inverse danger. What happens if the establishment, if Abel completely suppresses the revolutionary fire of Cain?
Right, if they just stamp out the fire entirely.
Then you end up with the stagnant, dying waters of institutional rot. You get a suffocating monarchy or this unyielding dogma that crushes all human progress.
It might be structurally perfect, but it's completely devoid of life.
It's spiritual death.
So society requires both the fire of the barricades and the architecture of the law. And to explain how these two extremes can possibly exist in the same space, the sources highlight one of Levy's most vivid metaphors.
The spinning top?
Yes, because when he talks about achieving peace between these factions, he isn't talking about everyone laying down their weapons and taking a nap.
Far from it. Peace for the true magus is not a state of passive rest. It is a hyperdynamic equilibrium.
I just love the physics of the spinning top analogy. If you watch a child's toy top, when it first starts spinning, it wobbles.
Right, it's unstable.
And when it loses momentum, it falls over. But when you apply maximum force, when it is spinning at its absolute highest velocity, it achieves this incredible gyroscopic stability.
It looks completely motionless.
Exactly. The ferocious, volatile energy of the revolution is held in absolute stillness by the structure of order. It is buzzing with kinetic heat, but it is standing perfectly upright.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, that gyroscopic stability is the essence of hermetic balance. The magus is the individual who can act as that center axis.
The center of the top.
Yes. They can handle the lightning of chaotic subversive currents without being vaporized by them because they filter that energy through a perfectly structured intellect.
That makes so much sense. And it perfectly synthesizes why Levy vehemently rejected both of the dominant worldviews of his era.
Right. He was fighting a two-front war, philosophically.
He rejected religious fanaticism. because the fanatic is trying to extinguish the fire of human inquiry. Fanaticism tries to kill Cain,
And he equally rejected the rising tide of scientific materialism.
because the pure materialist refuses to acknowledge the invisible organizing spirit. Materialism tries to kill Abel.
Both extremes are half-blind. If you amputate either the active or the passive principle, the spinning top loses its gyroscopic stability and just crashes to the table.
Which brings us to the ultimate application of this entire system. If a practitioner actually achieves that spinning top equilibrium, what happens?
Levy says that human knowledge fundamentally transforms. It evolves into something entirely different. Gnosis.
But there is a very strict rule for that transformation.
Yes, Levy warns that human science only becomes wise when it is modest and when it submits to what he calls universal reason.
And we have to be careful here, because writing in post-Enlightenment France, the word reason was heavily loaded.
Oh, very much so. The secular world had practically turned reason into a new deity. They literally had a cult of reason during the revolution.
So Levy is kind of hijacking their vocabulary.
He absolutely is. When he says universal reason, he isn't talking about cold, atheistic logic. He is talking about the logos, the Neoplatonic nous.
The underlying divine operating system of reality.
Right. He is arguing that human intellect in its isolated state is just a fragmented mind banging its head against a wall. To achieve actual wisdom, the intellect has to structurally submit to the broader blueprint of the cosmos.
And that submission requires a specific posture, modesty. But the sources clarify that modesty here isn't about, like, emotional self-deprecation.
No, it's from the Latin modestia.
It's about knowing your exact measure, your exact proportion in relation to the universe. You aren't groveling, you just know exactly how small you are.
That's a great way to put it. But Levy doesn't stop there. He introduces what I think is the most crucial failsafe in his entire system.
Let's hear it.
He says this universal reason must be taught by love or universal charity.
This is the linchpin, isn't it?
It is what keeps the entire magical architecture from collapsing into tyranny. When he says charity or love, he is invoking the Latin caritas or the Greek agape.
The unconditional connective tissue between the spiritual and material realms.
Exactly. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, this is the sphere of cheesed mercy, expansion, loving kindness. Cheesed operates as a necessary counterbalance to severe restricting logic.
Wait, let's play this out mechanically.
Mm,
What happens if an occult practitioner decides they don't need the failsafe?
what do you mean?
Like, say they study the mechanics, they figure out how to manipulate the astral light, and they just decide, I'm skipping the universal love part, I just want the power for my own advancement.
Well, the source text is very clear on this. The mechanism of their own practice will destroy them.
Really?
Yes. Levy defines black magic precisely as the egotistical, fractured abuse of cosmic forces. Universal energy requires connection.
So if you attempt to hoard the astral light for purely selfish motives,
You are essentially detaching your wire from the main grid.
because you aren't aligned with the logos anymore, you're just an isolated battery.
Precisely. Without the grounding wire of universal charity, raw knowledge curdles. Your capacity to operate safely is strictly capped by your willingness to harmonize with the collective whole.
So if you try to run massive amounts of universal current through the tiny fractured wire of your own ego,
The circuit overloads. The energy snaps back and it vaporizes the operator.
the fuse blows. That is a terrifying, yet completely logical mechanical consequence.
And this profound respect for the limits of the operator leads directly to Levy's redefinition of gnosis.
Which is fascinating, because when we hear the word gnosis today, the cultural assumption is that it means achieving absolute mastery.
Right, it's the Hollywood version of the sorcerer who has conquered the universe and holds all the secret cheat codes to reality.
But Levy entirely shatters that illusion.
He does. He writes that human science can only be called gnosis, quote, because it at least knows what it cannot yet brag about mastering perfectly.
Knowing what you cannot brag about mastering, that is a staggering pivot.
It really is. True gnosis, for Levy, is the agonizingly clear perception of the boundary of your own ignorance.
It is a realization that the great humming engine of the universe cannot be bullied into submission by your academic vanity or your magical willpower.
In the Kabbalistic system, it is the experience of standing at the threshold of Bina, the sphere of profound understanding.
You can suddenly perceive the immense, terrifying architecture of the cosmos, But you are acutely aware that you do not hold the keys to the temple doors.
Exactly. You can see the blueprint, but you don't own the building.
It is a humbling, exacting inventory of your own limitations, which completely flies in the face of those old, vulgar grimoires.
Oh, the superstitious spell books.
Yeah, the ones that promised if you just draw the right sigil and chant the right words, you can command demons, alter reality, and force the universe to do your bidding.
Levy is exposing that as the ultimate delusion of the amateur. Before you can direct even a fraction of the elemental forces around you, you have to achieve interstructural sovereignty.
True spiritual power is never a triumphant, arrogant declaration of dominance over nature.
No, it is recognizing exactly which chair you occupy in that cosmic parliament and demonstrating profound respect for the massive ancient forces sitting across the table from you.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener, when you step away from the 19th century occult lodges and walk into your actual daily life?
Because the internal physics Levy describes are incredibly grounded.
They really are. Think about the last time you felt raw ambition, intense anger, or an overwhelming drive to force an outcome. Levy's definition of wisdom isn't asking you to extinguish that fire.
It's not demanding that you become weak or detached.
Right. It is asking you to let the intelligence of Abel serve as the circuitry for the fire of Cain. When that wild energy flares up, you don't pour water on it. You build a hearth around the flames.
You utilize the heat to warm your house instead of letting it burn the entire structure to the ground.
Which brings up one final thought I want to leave everyone with.
This raises a really important question to walk away with today. If true gnosis requires a humbling inventory of one's limitations,
Right.
and if attempting to dominate the universal current only results in the destruction of the operator, does that mean the ultimate, highest act of high magic isn't about imposing your will on the universe at all?
Wow.
Perhaps true occult power looks less like domination and entirely like surrender to the grander equilibrium.
What a massive paradigm shift. We go in expecting that clean, binary medical x-ray of how reality operates, and Levy basically hands us a spinning top, buzzing with ferocious velocity, demanding we find the stillness inside of it.
It's a completely different way to move through the world.
It really is. A huge thank you to you, our listener, for joining us on this deep dive into the source material. Take that framework with you today, Power, that has finally learned good manners. We will catch you on the next deep dive.
I got lightning in my veins, heartbeats dancing in the rain. Every time I cross the line, love kept pulling me